All right, here we're going to talk a little bit about are humans just another animal? See, because behaviorism is a real rigid way of viewing psychology, and behaviorism, as we're going to describe here, dominated psychology for a long, long, long time. And behaviorism, if you take it to its extreme, removes human free will and makes human beings as nothing more than um, nothing different than any other creature, any other thing in the universe. So humans are just another animal. Okay, so we're going to come back to this description for the reaction paper. When we get to that point, when we get to the end. So let's just start here. Behaviorism is a school of psychology, officially founded by John Watson, and it insisted that behavior is psychology's subject matter, and the goal of psychology is the prediction and control of behavior, right? The definition of psychology should never include any mental life stuff. Any mentalistic terminology is gone. Okay? It had already been sort of discounted by the functionalists, but under the behaviorist mentalistic termina, gone. There is no more. There was emphasis on animal research because there was this understanding that human beings are just another animal. The laws of the universe are the laws of the universe. If you study, don't get me wrong, a human is more complicated than an animal, than a rat or something. But if you are studying, say, for example, how a rock falls in a vacuum, it's the same rules as if you're talking about how universes, heck, galaxies interact with each other, right? How the push and the pull of the it's the same rules. It's just one is simple and one was difficult. So they studied animals so that they could reveal the basic fundamental rules, because the rules, the laws, are the laws. Okay, so apparently this isn't. Here is a quick reminder slide of Pavlov for you. You remember before conditioning, the meat leads to drooling. That's an unconditioned reflex, unlearned reflex. Before conditioning, the bell, the dog goes, what? I hear it. It's a neutral sound. During acquisition, and again, my image is missing. During this acquisition stage, there should be a picture of both a bell and meat, and I don't have any idea where that meat picture is. But you go ding 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 meat drool during the acquisition stage, ding 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 meat drool, ding 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 meat drool, and then after doing that a bunch of times, then you just go ding ding ding, and the dog drools, and now we call it a conditioned reflex. So if you recall, it is a reflex that is only occurring because of learning that has occurred. Okay, so that was just a quick reminder. Now, Pavlov had a very low opinion of psychology, as I had already told you, and it wasn't necessarily because psychology studied consciousness, but because it used introspection to study consciousness. As I have told you, Titchener's structuralism pissed off everybody for so many different reasons, and it pissed off the behaviorist because introspection is not a scientific way of learning anything. It is not empirical. You're not learning anything. Okay? So he felt that his work on the conditioned reflex was really the physiology behind what would have been called associationism. Associationism, as we know, is a major foundational block going back to Aristotle, and they were formalized by John Locke. Heck, all of the empirical philosophers, including John Stuart Mill, had all kinds of associationism stuff. He felt he had found not just associationism, which he felt was a wonderful thing to study, but the physiology of it. Okay, he felt that Thorndike was the only psychologist that was really on the right path. And you recall Thorndike, of course, the cats in the puzzle boxes. Thorndike was not talking about the internal processes. He was talking about trial and error and changes in behavior. Okay, he was very clear about that. Meanwhile, in Russia, there was other people running. Okay, here's a guy, Bekhterev. That's a cool name, Bekhterev. And Bekhterev, he studied around Wundt in Germany and Charcot in France. Studied under some of the Western Europeans, and put together the first psych lab. But he argued for a completely objective psychology. This is very interesting. This is even before Pavlov really got into psychology. Okay, even though I'm presenting Bekhterev after Pavlov, Bechterev came before Pavlov. I know, whatever. Blame your textbook authors, okay? So, he argued for completely objective. In other words, introspection is subjective. The study of behavior is objective, okay? Look at the relationship between stimuli in the environment and behaviors that are exhibited by an organism, okay? He writes his book, General Principles of Human Reflexology, an Introduction to the Objective Study of Personality. And so, Bechterev, and we come to know the word behaviorism, but Bechterev introduced the word reflexology, okay? I used it, you could study humans because it emphasizes study of the relationship between the environmental events and overt behaviors, okay? And in this way, Bechterev could well be considered the first behaviorist, even though the official school of behaviorism doesn't start, I want to say 1919, is when Watson first publishes his article, Psychology, the way a behaviorist views it. Well, it turns out that John Watson, he was an up-and-comer in... well, here, in fact, this is his earlier life. He spent some time in Chicago. While in Chicago, he worked with Jacques Loeb, who was a ethologist, basically, studying animal behaviors. And Loeb had found that the behavior of simple organisms was so reflexive. It was just environmental stimuli triggered behavioral responses. Now, these were called tropisms, and he studied certain organisms like maggots. Environmental stimuli, light, leads to behaviors, move away from light. Okay, it's just reflex. Taking that a little further, perhaps it's not quite in the realm of tropism, but in the same concept, because he did this work, is like migration. This incredibly complicated behavior of migration is triggered by an environmental stimuli and change in weather patterns, and you need no mental event to describe this incredibly complicated set of behaviors. There was zero mental events required, and John Watson took this idea with him because after Chicago, he was in the University of Chicago, he moved up to Johns Hopkins University, and at Johns Hopkins he was an up-and-comer. He was something important. But what happened was that the guy in charge of the department was Baldwin, Daniel Baldwin, Billy Baldwin, one of those Baldwins, right? I don't know which Baldwin, but Baldwin was in charge of the department, and Baldwin was the editor of the American Psychologist, which is by far the most important journal of psychology. I mean, it was the preeminent journal. Therefore, as the editor of that, Baldwin decided the direction that psychology was going to go. And Watson had these ideas floating around, these wacky behavioral ideas, and he didn't really have a platform for it. Well, Baldwin gets caught in a brothel with a hooker, and they're like, Baldwin, you're gone. And so all of a sudden, John Watson gets the biggest promotion of his life. And he became the head of the department at Johns Hopkins, which was a big move. But the big move was really he also got the editorship of the psychological science. And he really had no business being the editor, but he just happened to be there the day Baldwin got busted. All right. So he moves into this position, and he almost immediately publishes his article that he's been contemplating for years, but knew that he had already presented it to friends and had gotten a cold reception at best. But now he's the editor. He's like, what the hell, So he publishes Psychology as a Behaviorist Views It. Okay? And behaviorism is born. In its most radical form, radical behaviorism says that only directly observable events, such as stimuli and response, should constitute the subject matter of psychology. You should never, ever... See, here's the old classic... The doorbell rang. My dog approached the door and wagged its tail. Okay? Stimulus, doorbell rang. Response, dog wagged its tail. Now, we have an automatic tendency to want to say, the doorbell rang, my dog got excited, and he went to the door. Okay, says the radical behaviorist, excited? What is this thing you call excited? Can you show me 3 cups of excited? Because I can show you... Doorbell rang. I can show you Dog approached the door. I can show you the stimulus, I can show you the response, but you cannot show me the excited. So don't you talk about the excited. You're wasting our time. Okay? Well, there are other versions of behaviorism as well. I mean, John Watson's version was quite radical, and I mean, B.F. Skinner's version was quite radical, and we'll get a little bit to that too. But at a less extreme version, methodological behaviorism, a version that accepts the idea that, yes, external behavior, dog approaches door, should be the subject matter, but you can talk about internal things like the dog was happy. Yeah, they exist. All right. Now, you can't exactly study it per se in a research sense, but it isn't necessarily outside the realm of psychology. Okay. Now, along this time, William McDougall had his own view of behaviorism. William McDougall was sort of coming up with his own little things. He was an up-and-comer, too. I mean, look at that. In 1905, he said psychology is the science of behavior, and that was even before Bechterew, okay? So he's an up-and-comer, and it was somewhere around 1923 or something. And William McDougall and John Watson had some differing views on how psychology was supposed to work. And so, McDougall felt that introspection was no good, but he said you could study consciousness. He said mental events are important. I mean, there was some differences, somewhat trivial, but I mean, to them it was a big deal. Well, there was a big debate. It was McDougall versus Watson in a public arena, right? Well, it turns out that Watson was kind of a ladies' man, and McDougall was a stuffy British dude that just had no charisma, all right? And apparently during this debate, it was just a wipeout. I mean, Watson just mopped the floor with him, even though when other neutral readers, they read the debate, okay? Neutral readers afterwards read the debate and said, okay, McDougall won this thing in a landslide. McDougall's version of behaviorism should be dominating America. But when it came to the actual public forum, Watson mopped the floor with McDougall, and McDougall lost, and McDougall became nothing more than a footnote in history. And it's an interesting thing to think that a different view of psychology would have dominated our textbooks if the guy just had a little bit of charisma. All right, what a crazy world. All right, going back to this question, are humans just another animal? So now let me break this down, okay? Many people think behaviorism is too mechanistic, okay? Because here's the deal. There are universal laws of human behavior, say a behaviorist. They say the laws of a butterfly or the stimulus response laws of a butterfly are the same as the stimulus response laws of a rat and the same as the stimulus response laws of a human. And it kind of removes really, it turns humans into mechanical creatures, okay? Subject to literally descriptions like in physics or something, physics or cause and effect. And it completely removes free will, okay? It also ignores those things that makes us different from each other. It emphasizes the universal laws of human nature. So now, here's your first question. If you want to predict behavior, which is it better to know? The universal laws of human behavior, or is it better to know things that make a person unique? So if you want to predict what little Johnny's going to do, should you understand the universal laws of how humans work in general, or should you focus on those things that make little Johnny unique? Okay, you want to predict Johnny. All right, different question. In order to truly understand little Johnny, you want to understand him. I don't know what that means. That's why I put it in quotes. If you want to understand little Johnny, is it better to know these universal laws or better to know those things that make little Johnny truly unique? Okay? Which one would let you truly know Johnny? All right? That's up to you. You figure that one out. I have opinions about these questions myself, obviously, and I think that you can kind of get an idea. Now, this third question, I don't want you to approach this third question as though it's somehow separate from the first two, it's somehow different, because it's not. It's the same thing. It's a question: are humans mechanistic? Do these mechanistic laws describe humans and animals? So behaviorism made the study of animals respectable. We can now learn something about humans by studying animals, according to the behaviorist. And so the question is, are we qualitatively different from other animals? Is there something that makes us different? Hell, maybe it's the soul. What do I know you're going to say, okay? Is there something that makes us completely different from another animal? What is it? All right? Because clearly me and my dog are different, okay? But what is it that really makes us different? Well, um, uh, good luck with that. Okay, I teach a cognitive class enough to tell you that you're going to be awfully hard pressed to find something that truly makes you unique. So you tell me, what is it that would separate you? What makes you different from these other animals? Or are you simply, as the behaviorist said, nothing more than a stimulus response machine? Okay, so ponder that a little bit, and I will see you the next time as I promised you the Baby Albert, but swear next time is Baby Albert, all right? I'm going to get that Baby Albert next one. See you then.